The letter arrived on a Tuesday, and Tuesdays never brought anything worth opening. Margot Caldwell stood by the small wooden table near her window and stared at the envelope as if it might explode in her hands. There was no return address, no official stamp, no family seal pressed into wax. Just her name written carefully in dark ink, each letter shaped with quiet patience, as if the person who wrote it had taken their time and held their breath. For a long moment, she did not move. She had written 47 letters over the past 3 months. 47 letters to a man she had never seen. 47 pieces of her heart folded into envelopes and sent across miles of danger and smoke. She had told herself not to expect an answer. Most soldiers never wrote back. Some never lived long enough to try. Gosh, she should have placed the envelope on the shelf with the rest of the unopened mail. She should have ignored it. Instead, she broke the seal. Dear kind stranger, your letter found me in a place that smells of wet earth and gunpowder. I will not pretend it is noble here. It is cold. It is loud. It is frightening in ways I cannot describe. But when I held your letter in my hands, for a few minutes, I was not afraid. I was just a man reading words written by someone who chose to care. My name is William. That is all I can tell you. Regulations do not allow more. But I can say this. When you wrote about lavender soap and the quiet of your cottage, I remembered my mother's kitchen. I remembered warmth. Would you write again? Margot read the letter once, then twice, then a third time. Her hands trembled so badly she had to sit down. Her cottage stood on the edge of a small town in upstate New York, where winters were long and silence felt heavier than snow. It smelled of lavender soap and old books, just as she had described. She had lived there alone for 4 years since her husband passed away from fever. They had no children, no close relatives, only the echo of footsteps that no longer walked beside her. The local pastor had announced the letter-writing program after Sunday service. He had said soldiers needed comfort. He had said even a few kind words could keep a man from losing hope. Margot had not planned to join. She barely spoke to her neighbors. She avoided gatherings. Grief had wrapped around her like a heavy coat she did not know how to remove. But that night, the house had felt too quiet. Yet the clock ticking on the wall had sounded like a reminder of everything she had lost. So she sat at her small writing desk, lit the oil lamp, and picked up her pen. She had written because silence was unbearable, because her hands needed something to do besides folding laundry that no one would wear, because somewhere out there, perhaps another lonely soul needed to know he was not forgotten. She addressed the envelope to unknown soldier and sent it away without thinking too hard about the man who might read it. She never expected William. After his first reply, she wrote back that same evening. Then again, 3 days later. Then again, the following week. The letters became part of her life, like breathing in the morning air. She told him about her small garden that refused to bloom properly, about the neighbor's gray cat that visited her windowsill each morning, about the way church bells sounded softer when it rained. Small things, ordinary things. William wrote back every time. He told her about the stars above the battlefield and how they looked peaceful even when everything below them was not. He told her about men in his unit who sang old songs at night to keep their spirits alive. He admitted he drank his coffee black because sugar felt like a luxury he did not deserve. He never shared his last name, never said exactly where he was stationed, never spoke of rank. And Margot never asked. They knew each other through words alone. She learned he once wanted to be a schoolteacher. He learned she was afraid of thunderstorms because they reminded her of the night her husband died. And he told her he had a scar on his left hand from cutting potatoes as a boy. She told him she talked to herself while cooking, just to hear a voice in the room. 3 months passed this way. 47 letters traveled back and forth across distance and danger. Margot began to look forward to the postman's knock more than anything else in her quiet life. She found herself smiling at the smallest things because she imagined describing them in her next letter. She never realized when affection quietly replaced kindness. Then one morning, instead of the postman, there was a firm knock at her door. Margot wiped her hands on her apron and walked across the narrow hallway. When she opened the door, her breath caught. A tall man stood on her doorstep. He wore a military uniform so clean it looked untouched by battle. And his dark hair was neatly combed. His posture was straight and controlled, as if he had been trained never to slouch. His face was handsome, but guarded. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said in a deep, steady voice. Her heart began to pound. "Yes, I am here about the letters." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Her fingers tightened on the doorframe. "Is he—" She could not finish the question. "He is alive." Air rushed back into her lungs. "But there is something you must know." The man reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. This one was thick, made of expensive paper, the kind used by wealthy families. The handwriting on it was unmistakable. Her hands felt numb as she opened it. "Dear Margot, forgive me. My name is not William. It is Nathaniel Gray. I am the Duke of Ashmont. I never meant to deceive you." But the paper slipped from her fingers and floated to the floor. The man standing before her watched carefully, as if waiting for anger or shock. She felt neither, only confusion and a strange ache in her chest. "Why?" she asked quietly. He took a slow breath. "Because you wrote to a soldier, not to a duke, not to a man with estates and expectations and a title heavier than any uniform. I wanted you to write to me, not to my name." Margot studied him. "You should have told me." "I was afraid." His voice tightened slightly. "Afraid you would stop. Afraid you would see the title and not the man. Afraid I would lose the only honest thing in my life." She bent down and picked up the fallen letter, finishing the words with careful attention. "I am coming to see you, not out of duty, but because your letters have become the one place I feel understood. If you turn me away, I will accept it, but I hope you will not." "Nathaniel." She looked up at him again. "You came all this way just to confess?" "Yes. That is a long journey for the truth." "It is." Silence stretched between them. Then Margot stepped aside and opened the door wider. "You should come in," she said. "The tea is still warm." Nathaniel Gray had faced gunfire without shaking, yet stepping into her small cottage made his hands unsteady. The room smelled exactly as he remembered from her letters. Lavender, old paper, warm bread. A fire burned softly in the hearth. Books lined the shelves in uneven rows. A single teacup rested on the table beside a worn wooden chair. This was where she had written to him, and this was where she had chosen to care about a stranger. "Sit," she said gently. He obeyed. For a moment, they listened only to the crackling fire. "I read your letters many times," he admitted. "Sometimes twice in a single day." "You were truly there?" she asked softly. "In the fighting?" "Yes. Every word was true except my name." She studied his face, searching for lies and finding none. "Why volunteer?" "Because I could not ask men to die while I stayed comfortable at home. And because," he hesitated, "because I was lonely in ways I could not explain." Margot understood that loneliness. She had lived inside it for years. I wrote because I was lonely too, she said. Because I wanted someone, somewhere, to know I existed. I would have noticed if you stopped writing, he said quietly. Their eyes met. Outside, rain began to fall against the window. Inside, two strangers who were no longer strangers sat facing each other, both afraid and hopeful at the same time. Nathaniel leaned forward slightly. If you allow it, I would like to begin again. No lies, no false names. Just Nathaniel and Margot. She looked at him carefully, weighing his words. You promise no more secrets? I promise. Margot nodded once. Then tell me, she said softly. Who are you when you are not hiding behind a title? And for the first time, Nathaniel Gray began to answer without fear. Nathaniel did not answer her question quickly. He sat very still, as if the truth needed to be chosen carefully before it was spoken. The firelight moved across his face, softening the sharp lines that had first made him look distant. When I am not hiding behind a title, he said at last, I am a man who does not sleep well. I am someone who stands in a room full of people and still feels alone. I am someone who once wanted to teach children how to read, not command soldiers how to march. Margot watched him closely. His voice had changed. It was no longer the voice of a man used to giving orders. It was the voice from the letters, the voice that had written about stars and cold nights and missing lavender soap. You wanted to be a teacher, she said gently. Yes, before my parents died, before the estate became my responsibility, or before everyone began calling me Your Grace instead of Nathaniel. The words did not sound proud. They sounded tired. Margot poured fresh tea into their cups. This time her hands were steady. You never told me you lost your parents so young. I did not want pity, he replied. I have had enough of that in my life. People either pity me or fear me. Very few speak to me honestly. And you believe I do? I know you do. The certainty in his voice made her heart tighten. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the windows as if the sky itself were listening. Tell me about the man who pushed you out of the way, she said after a moment. The one you mentioned in your last letter. Nathaniel's expression changed. Something darker moved through his eyes. Thomas Whitmore, he said quietly. He was 23. Well, he laughed too loudly. He talked about his fiancée as if she were the sun itself. He believed the war would end quickly. He believed in many things. Margot listened without interrupting. We were walking through the trench when the shell hit. He saw it before I did. He pushed me down. He took the medal meant for me. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He died before I could say thank you. The room felt smaller. You wrote to his fiancée, Margot said. Yes, not as a duke, as his friend. I told her he was brave. I told her his last thoughts were of her. It was the least I could give. Margot reached across the table and placed her hand over his again. This time, he did not hesitate to turn his palm upward and hold her fingers properly. That matters, she said softly. More than you know. He looked down at their hands as if he were memorizing the feeling. I survived because of him, he said, and I came here because of you. She met his eyes. Because of me? Yes. When Thomas died, I realized how easily everything can end. Titles mean nothing in a grave. Land means nothing. Money means nothing. The only thing that felt real were your letters. They were proof that somewhere, someone chose to care whether I lived or died. Margot swallowed. I did care, she said simply. I know. The honesty between them felt fragile and powerful at the same time. Nathaniel stood slowly and walked toward the bookshelf along the wall. He ran his fingers along the spines of her worn novels. You have read all of these? He asked. Most of them twice, she replied. Books are quieter than people, but they do not demand in anything. And yet you wrote to a stranger. She smiled faintly. Because I was tired of quiet. He turned to face her fully. So was I. The words settled between them. Margot rose from her chair and moved closer, stopping a safe distance away. Up close, she could see faint lines near his eyes, shadows beneath them that no amount of rest would erase quickly. You are not what I expected, she admitted. What did you expect? A boy pretending to be brave, or a man who lied easily? She paused. You do not lie easily. It costs you. It does. Silence returned, but it was softer now. You said you wished to begin again, she said carefully. What does that mean to you? It means I would like to court you properly. The word hung in the air. Margot felt her pulse quicken. Court me? Yes, with honesty, but with intention, not through paper and ink, but in person. You are a duke, and you are Margot. That does not erase the difference between us. No, he agreed, but it does not have to define us either. She crossed her arms lightly, thinking, your world is very different from mine. Grand houses, formal dinners, expectations. My world is loud and demanding, he said. Yours is quiet and steady. I do not wish to change you to fit my world. I want to learn how to build one that holds both. His words were simple, but they carried weight. Margot walked back to the table and leaned against it. And what would people say? She asked. About a duke courting a widow from a small town? They will say many things, he replied calmly. They always do. But they do not have to live my life. I do. And if I disappoint you? She asked softly. If the woman in the letters is braver than the one standing in front of you? He stepped closer, closing some of the distance between them. The woman in the letters is the woman standing in front of me, he said. You are brave enough to write 47 letters to a man who might never answer. You are brave enough to open your door to someone who lied to you. That is not weakness. Her eyes stung unexpectedly. You make it sound simple. It is not simple, he admitted. But it is real. The rain began to slow outside, fading into a gentle drizzle. Margot studied him again. If we attempt this, she said carefully, you must understand something. Anything. I will not become small to fit into your life. I will not pretend to be someone I am not. I will not smile politely while others speak over me. A faint smile touched his lips. Good. Good? I would not want you to. She searched his face for mockery and found none. And you, she continued, must not hide pieces of yourself again. If you are afraid, say so. If you are unsure, say so. I will not compete with a ghost named William. He shook his head gently. William is not a ghost. He is part of me. But you deserve all of me, not fragments. The fire popped loudly behind them. Nathaniel reached out slowly, giving her time to step away. When she did not, his hand brushed lightly against her cheek. His touch was careful, almost reverent. I do not expect you to decide today, he said quietly. I know this is sudden. I only ask for a chance. Margot felt the warmth of his hand against her skin. But it had been years since someone had touched her like this. Years since she had allowed herself to imagine anything beyond survival. You traveled far, she said softly. I would travel farther. For what? For the possibility of not being alone anymore. Her breath caught. Outside, the clouds began to break apart. A pale light slipped through the window, silver and calm after the storm. Margot looked at him and saw not a duke, not a uniform, but a man who had stood in mud and fear and still chosen honesty. If we try this, she said slowly, it will not be easy. I do not want easy, he replied. I want true. She felt a quiet shift inside her chest, like a door opening just a little. Then stay, she said at last. Stay for dinner. Stay until tomorrow. We will speak more. We will see what this is when the sun rises. Relief moved across his face so openly that it made her smile. I would like that very much, he said. Margot stepped back toward the kitchen area of her cottage. I warn you, she called lightly. I burn bread when I am distracted. Then I will consider it a sign I have succeeded, he answered. For the first time since her husband's death, laughter filled the small cottage without feeling forced. As evening settled around them, they moved carefully around each other in the narrow kitchen space. She sliced vegetables while he set the table. Their shoulders brushed once, then twice, and neither apologized. Outside, the sky cleared completely. The first stars appeared above the quiet town. The same stars he had written about from a battlefield far away. Now they shone over a small cottage where two lonely people were daring to hope. And though neither of them said it aloud, both felt the same question rising in their hearts. Could letters truly become love? Neither of them knew yet. But for the first time in years, both were willing to find out. Dinner was simple. Bread that was slightly overbaked, vegetable stew that tasted better than it looked, and tea poured more times than either of them could count. Yet Nathaniel ate as if he had never tasted anything so good. Margot noticed the way he relaxed as the evening went on. The stiffness left his shoulders. The careful way he had first chosen every word slowly faded. And by the time the fire burned low, he was speaking easily, even smiling without hesitation. You look different, she said quietly. Different how? Less like someone preparing for battle. He let out a soft breath. I have been preparing for battle my entire life. War was only the most obvious one. She understood that more than he expected. After dinner, they moved back to the sitting area. The cottage felt smaller in the dark, but warmer too. The storm had fully passed. Moonlight spilled through the window, mixing with the golden light of the fire. Nathaniel stood near the bookshelf again, studying a small framed photograph resting on the mantel. That is your husband, he said gently. Yes. He did not ask questions that would cause pain. He simply nodded with respect. I loved him, she said after a moment. He was kind, and he laughed easily, but he was not open. There were parts of him he never shared. Nathaniel turned toward her. And you needed that. Yes. Silence filled the space between them, but it was not uncomfortable. I do not want to replace your past, he said carefully. I only want to be part of your future. Her throat tightened. You speak as if you are certain there will be one, she said. I am certain of what I want. I am only unsure if you will allow it. Margot walked slowly toward him. She stopped close enough to see the faint scar across his left hand, the one he had written about when describing a stubborn potato and a careless knife. You are asking me to step into a world I have never imagined, she said. To leave this cottage, to face people who will judge me. I am asking you to walk beside me, he corrected softly, not behind me. The difference mattered. And if I choose to stay here? She asked. Then I will come here, he replied without hesitation. As often as you allow. She searched his face for pride or insult. There was none. Only sincerity. You would leave your estate for a cottage? I would leave comfort for truth. Her heart pounded. The fire crackled softly behind them. Outside, a cool breeze moved through the trees. Nathaniel, she said carefully, using his real name fully for the first time. Why do you trust this so much? We have only known each other through letters." "Because letters do not hide," he answered. "When a person writes alone at night, they do not perform. They reveal." He stepped closer, slowly, giving her time to move away. "You revealed your fears, your habits, your grief. I revealed mine. That kind of honesty is rare. I will not pretend it means nothing." Margot felt her defenses weakening. "I was afraid when you knocked," she admitted. "I thought you had come to tell me you were dead." He swallowed. "And now? Now I am afraid of something else." "What?" "That this might be real." He smiled gently. "It is." The word felt steady, solid. She reached out and touched the front of his uniform jacket, gripping the fabric lightly, as if testing whether he would disappear. "You will return to your estate," she said. "People will expect you to resume your duties. They may expect you to marry someone with influence." "They may," he agreed calmly. "And you would refuse?" "Yes." "For me?" "For us," he corrected. But the answer was not dramatic. It was simple. That made it stronger. Margot felt something shift inside her chest. The loneliness that had lived there for years loosened its hold just a little. "I cannot promise to be fearless," she whispered. "I do not need fearless," he replied. "I need honest." She looked up at him. His eyes held no demand, only hope. "You once wrote," she said slowly, "that you were afraid of failing the men who depended on you." "I am." "Then do not fail me." The words were soft, but they carried weight. "I will not," he said. A long moment passed. Then Margot nodded. "I will try," she said at last. "I will allow you to court me, but slowly, with truth, with patience." Relief washed over his face so openly that it made her chest ache. "Slowly," he agreed. "Joe, and you will write to me even when you return home." "I will write every week." "Every week is not enough," she said quietly. He smiled. "Then twice a week." She almost laughed. "And you will not send servants to speak for you?" "Never." "And you will visit without announcement like today?" He hesitated for a brief second. "With warning next time. I do not wish to frighten you again." "That would be wise." The room felt lighter. Nathaniel reached for her hand again. This time she did not hesitate. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had always known how. "I came here prepared for rejection," he said softly. "I told myself I would accept it if you closed the door." "Would you have?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "I would have tried once more." She smiled. "Stubborn," she murmured. Determined." The moonlight brightened the room. The stars outside were clear and sharp in the sky. "Look," he said gently, guiding her toward the window. They stood side by side, looking up. "The same stars," she whispered. "The same ones I wrote about." They did not need to say more. Nathaniel turned toward her slowly. He lifted his hand and brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. His touch was careful, asking permission without words. She did not pull away. "Margot," he said quietly, "forgive me." "For the lie?" "Yes." She studied him for a long moment. "I forgive you," she said. The words settled deeply between them. He leaned forward then, resting his forehead lightly against hers. The closeness felt natural, not rushed. 3 months of letters had already built something strong beneath them. "If at any time you wish to step back," he whispered, "tell me. I will. And if you doubt me, ask. I will." He hesitated only a second before pressing a soft kiss to her lips. It was not rushed or demanding. It was gentle and full of unspoken promises. A kiss built from ink and paper and shared loneliness. Margot's hands rose to hold the front of his jacket again, steadying herself as much as holding him. When they parted, both were breathing a little faster. "This is foolish," she murmured softly. "It may be," he admitted, "but it is ours." She laughed quietly, the sound warm and alive. "You realize," she said, "that the pastor will be unbearable when he learns his letter-writing program led to this." "To what?" Nathaniel asked. "To a duke standing in my cottage, asking to court me." He smiled at her fully now, without reserve. "You are the most important person in this room," he said simply. "That is all that matters." Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. "Stay tonight," she said softly. "The guest room is small, but it is warm." "I will stay," he answered. They remained by the window for a few more moments, watching the stars in silence. Two people who had once believed they were invisible now stood side by side, seen completely. The war would continue. Responsibilities would wait. Society would whisper. But in that small cottage, beneath a quiet sky, something stronger than fear had begun. Not because of titles, not because of duty, but because a widow chose to write 47 letters to a dying soldier. And when he knocked on her door, she chose to open it.